Have you ever felt that no matter how hard you work, life refuses to reward you? That you wake before the sun, sleep after the stars, and still somehow remain behind, watching others move forward while you stand still? If you have ever whispered to yourself, "What am I doing wrong?" then listen closely, because this is the story of a farmer who asked the same question and discovered an answer that changed everything. In a quiet village surrounded by rolling fields and distant hills lived a farmer named Kareem. Every morning, before the sky softened into light, Kareem rose from his thin mattress, washed his face with cold water, and stepped outside into the silence of dawn. The air carried the scent of soil and dew, and the earth beneath his feet felt alive, waiting. Kareem was known as the hardest worker in the village. While others stretched lazily in the morning, he was already walking through his fields, checking every plant, touching each leaf as if it were a child. He tilled longer, planted more seeds, and carried heavier loads than anyone else. His hands were rough and scarred, his back bent slightly from years of labor. Yet despite all this effort, his harvests were poor. Across the path from his land lived another farmer, Hamid. Hamid seemed relaxed, almost carefree. He worked fewer hours, laughed often, and even took time to sit beneath a tree during the hottest part of the day. Yet somehow, Hamid's fields flourished. His crops grew tall and green, while Kareem's remained weak and uneven. Each evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Kareem watched wagons loaded with Hamid's harvest pass by. A heavy knot formed in his chest, a mixture of confusion, frustration, and quiet despair. "Why?" he would whisper into the fading light. "Why does my effort bring no reward?" Days turned into months, and months into years. Kareem pushed himself harder. He woke earlier. He worked faster. He added more fertilizer, planted more seeds, watered more frequently. But instead of improving, his land seemed to grow tired. The soil hardened. The plants struggled. One afternoon, after a long morning under the scorching sun, Kareem collapsed beside his field. Sweat dripped from his face, and his breathing felt heavy. For the first time, he wondered if something was truly wrong, not with the land, but with himself. As he sat there, an old traveler approached along the dusty path. The man wore simple robes and carried a walking stick polished smooth by years of use. His eyes were calm, observant, and kind. "You look exhausted," the traveler said gently. "I work harder than anyone," Kareem replied, his voice filled with frustration. "Yet I fail while others succeed. Tell me, is life unfair, or am I cursed?" The old traveler sat beside him without speaking for a moment, watching the wind move across the fields. "May I walk through your land?" he finally asked. Kareem nodded. The old man walked slowly between the rows, touching the soil, examining the leaves. He noticed how tightly packed the earth was, how the plants competed for space, how some areas received too much water while others remained dry. When he returned, he said quietly, "You are indeed hard-working, but tell me, do you listen to your land?" Kareem frowned. "Listen? I work it every day." "That is not the same as listening," the traveler said softly. Kareem felt a flicker of irritation. "Hard work solves problems. Everyone knows that." The traveler smiled slightly. "Hard work is powerful, but hard work without wisdom is like running fast in the wrong direction." Those words lingered in the air. The traveler stayed in the village for several days. Each morning he observed Kareem's routine. He noticed how Kareem rushed from task to task, barely pausing to observe the results of his actions. He planted seeds densely, believing more seeds meant more crops. He watered excessively, thinking more water meant stronger growth. One evening, the traveler invited Kareem to walk to the hill overlooking the village. From there, they could see both fields, Kareem's and Hamid's. "Look carefully," the traveler said. Kareem stared. From above, he noticed something he had never seen before. Hamid's field was not crowded. The plants had space between them. The irrigation channels curved gently, distributing water evenly. There were areas left empty, allowing the soil to rest. "He works less," Kareem murmured. "He works differently," the traveler replied. The realization unsettled Kareem. For years, he had believed effort alone guaranteed success. He had measured his worth by how much he endured, how much he sacrificed. "But if I slow down," Kareem said quietly, "won't I fall even further behind?" The traveler turned towards him. "Sometimes slowing down is the fastest way forward." That night, Kareem lay awake thinking. His mind replayed the traveler's words again and again. Could it be that his constant effort was actually harming his progress? The next morning, for the first time in years, Kareem did not rush. He walked slowly through his field, observing instead of acting. He noticed small details, the soil cracking from overwatering, the weaker plants struggling beneath the stronger ones, the areas where sunlight barely reached. He felt both embarrassed and hopeful. Embarrassed because the signs had always been there, unnoticed. Hopeful because perhaps failure was not permanent. Over the following weeks, Kareem began to change. He removed excess plants to create space. He reduced watering and adjusted irrigation paths. He took time to learn from others, even from Hamid, whom he had silently envied for so long. At first, it felt uncomfortable. Working less felt like laziness. Pausing felt like weakness. But slowly, the land responded. The soil softened. The plants grew steadier. One afternoon, as Kareem rested under a tree, something he had never allowed himself before, he felt an unfamiliar sensation, peace. He realized that for years he had been fighting against his circumstances instead of understanding them. He had equated struggle with virtue, believing that suffering proved dedication. But now he saw that wisdom required patience, observation, and humility. Months passed, and the harvest season arrived again. This time, Kareem's field stood vibrant and balanced. It was not the largest harvest in the village, but it was strong, healthy, and sustainable. As he gathered his crops, Kareem felt tears in his eyes, not from exhaustion, but from clarity. The traveler returned briefly before leaving the village forever. "Have you found your answer?" he asked. Kareem nodded slowly. "I thought success meant working harder than everyone else, but now I see it means understanding what truly needs to be done." The traveler smiled. "The world does not reward effort alone. It rewards aligned effort, effort guided by awareness." Years later, people in the village would speak of Kareem not as the hardest worker, but as the wisest farmer. He still worked diligently, but he also listened to the land, to others, and to himself. And perhaps this story speaks directly to you. In modern life, many of us believe that more hours, more pressure, more sacrifice will automatically bring success. We push ourselves until exhaustion becomes normal, until we forget to pause and ask whether our direction is right. But sometimes failure is not a sign that you are weak or unlucky. Sometimes it is a whisper urging you to change your approach. Working harder is not always the answer. Working smarter, more consciously, and more intentionally often is. The deepest wisdom lies in balance, between effort and reflection, between action and stillness. When you learn to listen,
truly listen to your situation, your environment, and your inner voice, you begin to move with life instead of against it. And maybe the question is not, why am I failing despite working so hard? But rather, am I working in harmony with what